My name is Alex, and I was one of 3 friends who thought sneaking into Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris at night would be a good idea. Looking back now, I don't know if we were just stupid, drunk on adrenaline, or cursed from the moment we stepped through those gates. All I know is this: one of us never walked back out. We were tourists, Americans with too much confidence and too little respect. It was June, warm and sticky, and the city felt alive with lights and noise. But Père Lachaise had been on our list. Everyone knows the names buried there: Jim Morrison, Oscar Wilde, Edith Piaf. The plan was simple: climb over the side wall after dark, take a few photos, maybe even a selfie at Morrison's grave, and brag later about how we pulled it off. We reached the cemetery just after midnight. The streets outside were silent, the kind of silence you only notice in a city as loud as Paris. The wall wasn't hard to climb, cracked stone with vines to grip. My friend Sam went first, then Juliet, then me. We landed inside with nervous laughter. The air immediately felt different, heavier. Gravel crunched under our sneakers as we moved between towering crypts and crooked headstones. Marble angels leaned forward, wings outstretched, their faces eroded into strange expressions. I had seen cemeteries before, but never one like this. It wasn't just old, it felt alive. We wound our way through narrow paths, the beam of my phone lighting plaques with dates that stretched back centuries. Sam, always the bold one, whispered, "Imagine if one of these lids just slid open right now." Julia hit him on the arm, but none of us laughed. By the time we found Jim Morrison's grave, the air was colder. I swear it was at least 10 degrees colder there than anywhere else. The stone was littered with flowers, candles, and graffiti scrawled by fans over the years. Sam insisted we take the selfie. He set his phone on timer, leaned in close, and pulled us together. Flash. We checked the photo immediately, huddled over the screen. At first, it looked normal. 3 dumb kids grinning in the dark. But then Julia's face went pale. "Who's that?" she whispered. Behind us, just over Sam's shoulder, was a man. Tall, with blurred features, as though the camera couldn't quite catch him. His face looked smeared, like wet paint running in the rain. No eyes, no mouth, just a distorted oval where a face should be. We spun around. No one was there. Only the grave. Only the dark. Sam laughed nervously. Glitch. Long exposure or something. He shoved the phone back into his pocket. But I noticed his hands shaking. We should have left right then. Instead, Sam kept walking, deeper into the cemetery. "Let's get another one," he called over his shoulder. Julia grabbed my arm. "I don't like this." I didn't either. But we followed. Minutes passed. The paths twisted endlessly. We should have been heading back toward the wall, but every turn only led to more graves, more mausoleums pressing in. The mist thickened. My phone battery hit 5%. Then we heard it. Footsteps. Behind us. We froze. The sound was slow, deliberate. Crunch. 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 I spun, phone light darting across the stones. Nothing. But the sound didn't stop. It circled us, always just out of sight. "Stop messing around," Sam shouted, though his voice cracked. The footsteps stopped. We bolted. I don't know how long we ran. Time blurred. Every path looked the same, every statue's face warped in shadow. My lungs burned. My legs ached. Finally, we stumbled into a wide clearing. And there, leaning against a monument, was Sam. He wasn't moving. His phone lay face up on the ground, flashlight on, screen cracked. Julia reached him first. She shook him, calling his name. He didn't respond. His eyes were open but unfocused, pupils wide, face slack, like something had drained him empty. Then I saw the screen. The phone had taken another photo, a final selfie. It was just Sam in the frame. His face distorted, smeared exactly like the figure we'd seen before. His features looked erased, blurred into nothingness. We dragged him to the wall somehow. Don't ask me how, we were half out of our minds. He never woke. By the time we got him to a hospital, it was too late. Cardiac arrest, they said. At 23 years old. Julia and I tried to tell the police about the cemetery, about the photo. They dismissed it. Stress, they said. Shock. They kept the phone. I never saw it again. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see that photo. Sam's face blurred into the same hollow smear as the man standing behind us. And I wonder if Père Lachaise gave him back to the ground that night. Not as a body, but as another shadow. Waiting for the next group of idiots who think a cemetery is just a place for selfies. My name is Natalia, and back when I studied at Lviv University in Ukraine, I thought I knew my city like the back of my hand. Lviv is famous for its cobblestone streets, old churches, and its cemeteries that feel more like outdoor museums than burial grounds. Tourists come from all over the world to see the carvings, the angels, the family crypts that look like miniature chapels. But one night, I learned the hard way that cemeteries don't exist for the living, no matter how beautiful they may seem in daylight. It happened in late October. The air smelled of rain, the kind of damp cold that clings to your bones. I had been at a friend's small apartment near Pidzanch, on the other side of the city, and instead of calling a taxi, I decided to walk. When I reached the tall gates of Lachaise Cemetery, I noticed they weren't locked, just slightly open. And in my tired mind, it seemed like a perfect shortcut. People in Lviv talk about the cemetery like it's a place of art. Statues of angels draped in moss, Baroque tombs with Latin inscriptions, entire family vaults that look like tiny cathedrals. I had walked past it many times in the daylight, but never at night. Something about the fog rolling through the iron gates made it feel different. My phone's flashlight carved a narrow beam through the mist, and with a nervous laugh, I stepped inside. At first, it felt almost peaceful. My footsteps echoed off stone paths, the sound swallowed by fog. The statues loomed like guardians, serene faces, folded wings. Some of them leaned forward as if watching me. I told myself it was my imagination. Just shadows. Just tricks of light. Halfway through, I saw them. Up ahead, near a cracked marble monument, stood a group of people. 6, maybe 7 figures, motionless in the mist. They were arranged in a half circle, facing a tomb. My first thought was that it was a midnight tour. Lviv is full of strange tours, people who dramatize stories of vampires, witches, and tragic deaths. Maybe these were actors rehearsing? But then one of them shifted. Slowly, unnaturally, they turned their heads. All of them. At the same time, I raised my phone higher, my heart racing. The beam cut through their faces, and my blood went cold. Where eyes should have been were hollow sockets, black voids that swallowed the light. Their mouths were too wide, carved into grotesque grimaces that didn't belong to human skulls. I gasped, and my phone slipped from my hands. The screen cracked against the gravel, but the light stayed on, spinning wildly across stone angels and crosses. By the time I snatched it up, the figures were gone. Just gone. The path stretched ahead, empty. No footsteps, no voices. Only silence pressing in like a weight. I told myself to keep walking. Just move. Get out. The cemetery isn't endless. The gates are on the other side. But every turn I took looked the same. Leaning crosses, eroded names, statues with broken wings. The fog thickened until I could barely see 2 steps ahead. That's when I heard it. A whisper. At first it was faint, like wind pushing through leaves. But then I recognized it. A voice. And it was saying my name. Natalia. The sound came from behind a mausoleum to my left. My throat went dry. No one knew I was here. No one could know. I stumbled backward, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then the whisper came again, closer. Natalia, I ran. My boots struck the stone path in frantic rhythm, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly. Names flashed by: Anna, Petro, Dimitro. Each headstone older than the last. 1883, 1901, 1927. It felt like time itself was folding in on me, pulling me deeper into the past. I tripped. My knee slammed into stone. Pain shot up my leg. My phone flew from my hand, sliding across the path before stopping at the base of a grave. I crawled toward it, my fingers brushing dirt, when I saw the inscription. The grave was a family plot, for names carved into the stone, worn but legible. The last name froze me in place. Natalia H., 1897 to 1916. My name, exactly my name, And the year of death, 19. The same age I was. A wave of cold dread rushed through me, thicker than the October air. The ground beneath me felt damp, soft, like it might open up and swallow me whole. Then I heard footsteps. Behind me, slow, heavy, crunching against gravel. I didn't dare turn around. I grabbed my phone and ran as if my life depended on it, because maybe it did. The mist seemed to claw at me, statues leaning closer, wings stretching wider. My lungs burned, tears stung my eyes, but I didn't stop until I saw it, the faint glow of the street through the iron gates. I burst out onto the cobblestones, collapsing on my knees. Behind me, the gates swung shut with a deafening clang. The sound echoed down the empty street, final, like a verdict. I never went back to Lviv Cemetery after that night. Not once. But 2 days later, my curiosity got the better of me. I needed to know if what I saw was real. I went to the university archives. The old cemetery records are stored there, dusty ledgers bound in cracked leather. My hands shook as I turned the pages. And then I found it. The name, Natalia H. Died at 19. Buried in Lviv. Cause of death, unexplained illness. The letters seemed darker than the rest, as if they had been written yesterday, not over a century ago. My fingers came away damp, though the page was dry. Since then, I can't walk past the cemetery. Even in daylight, I cross the street, avoid the gates. But sometimes, when fog rolls into Lviv and the city grows too quiet, I hear it again. A whisper in the mist, calling my name, and I know it isn't coming from the living. My name is Marquez, and I've been a taxi driver in Vienna, Austria, for almost 15 years. I've seen nearly everything on these streets. Drunks passed out in the back seat, tourists crying after losing passports, rich couples whispering secrets they thought I couldn't hear. But nothing, absolutely nothing, ever scared me the way one late ride to Zentralfriedhof did. For those who don't know, Zentralfriedhof, Vienna's central cemetery, isn't just any graveyard. It's one of the largest in Europe. Over 3 million people are buried there, musicians like Beethoven, Schubert, Strauss. Entire sections are devoted to different religions and communities. During the day, it feels almost like a park, a place of history and peace. But at night it becomes something else entirely. It was late autumn, close to midnight. Rain had fallen earlier, and the streets shimmered under the street lamps. My shift was slow, and I was thinking of heading home when I saw her. An elderly woman stood alone near a tram stop, her figure stiff, almost too still. She raised one hand when I slowed, and I unlocked the doors. She climbed in with surprising ease for someone her age. Her coat looked old, not vintage in a stylish way, but genuinely old, like something pulled from the 1940s. A dark scarf framed her pale face, tied neatly under her chin. She sat without a word, her hands folded in her lap. "Where to?" I asked, glancing back. Her voice was soft, almost weightless. "To the main gates. Central Cemetery." I hesitated. Who goes to a cemetery at this hour? But I shrugged and started the meter. Work is work. The ride began in silence. Vienna at night can be calm, almost unnervingly so. The wide boulevard stretched empty, the wet asphalt reflecting the lamps like glass. She didn't speak. I tried to start small talk about the rain, about how late it was, but she didn't answer. Not even a nod. Only her steady breathing filled the car. I kept sneaking glances in the rearview mirror. She sat perfectly still, eyes lowered, lips pressed thin. Something about her posture seemed wrong, too rigid, like she wasn't just sitting but waiting. As we neared the cemetery, the streets narrowed. Trees loomed over the road, their wet branches hanging low like arms reaching down. The iron gates of Zentralfriedhof rose in the distance, tall and black against the fog. Even from far away, I could see rows of crosses and angels stretching into darkness. I pulled up and stopped. The headlights lit the slick bars of the gate. My finger hovered over the meter switch. That'll be, but when I looked up into the mirror, the seat was empty. For a long second, I just stared. My mouth went dry. The impression of her weight still pressed faintly into the cushion, but the back door hadn't opened. The locks were still engaged. Panic spiked in my chest. I spun around fully. Nothing. Just the quiet interior of my cab, damp with the smell of earth. That's when I noticed something on the seat. A small bundle wrapped in brittle, yellowed paper. My hands shook as I picked it up. Inside were dried flowers, long dead, and tucked between them was a coin. It gleamed as if freshly minted, but the date stamped on it was 1942. I dropped it like it burned me. My heart hammered as I fumbled for the ignition. When the engine finally roared, I sped off, tires splashing water from the pavement. I didn't take another fare that night. I went home, sat in my kitchen until sunrise. The coin's image burned into my mind. The next day, I told myself it was exhaustion. Maybe I imagined her. Maybe someone left the flowers in the car before her. But something in me refused to let it go. By afternoon, I drove back to the cemetery. The gates were wide open now, heavy iron bars stretching toward the sky. Daylight softened the edges of the place, but the silence clung. I approached the gatekeeper, an old man in a cap, his face weathered like the stones around us. I asked, half jokingly, if anyone had come in around midnight. He gave me a strange look before shaking his head. "No living soul," he said. His German was thick with a Viennese accent. "But drivers like you, they see her sometimes." "See who?" I pressed. He shrugged. "An old woman. Coat scarf. She always asks for a ride to the cemetery. She always disappears before payment." His voice dropped lower. "Some say she was separated from her family during the war. She still tries to return." The words made my skin crawl. I wanted to argue, to laugh it off, but my throat closed around the sound. As I turned back toward my car, I froze. On the ground by the gate, lying in the damp gravel, was the same bouquet, the same brittle flowers, and the same coin shining faintly in the weak daylight. I didn't touch it this time. I walked back quickly, climbed into my cab, and drove off without looking in the mirror. Since that night, I avoid the area after dark. But sometimes, during long shifts, the radio crackles with static. And through the static, I swear I hear a woman's voice, soft, distant, murmuring directions. Always the same ones, toward Central Friedhof. And whenever I do glance in the rearview mirror at night, I can't shake the feeling that if I stare long enough, I'll see her sitting there again, hands folded neatly, waiting for me to take her back. My name is Daniel, and for almost a year, I worked as a night security guard at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York. When I first took the job, I told myself it was just another paycheck. I didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or anything supernatural. But the cemetery has a way of changing you. It isn't just the silence or the endless rows of tombstones. It's the weight in the air, like you're walking through a place that remembers everything you've ever done. The first weeks were uneventful. I patrolled the paths, checked the gates, and logged the hours. Greenwood is massive, hundreds of acres filled with graves, mausoleums, and winding roads. Sometimes you can walk for half an hour without seeing another living soul. That's solitude. It creeps under your skin. You start noticing every shift of shadow, every gust of air. By the end of my first week, I was jumping at the sound of squirrels darting through leaves. Then came the bells. I should explain something. In the 1800s, people had an irrational fear of being buried alive. To calm that fear, families sometimes attached little bells to their loved ones' coffins, tiny contraptions connected to the surface by string. If someone woke up underground, they could ring for help. It sounds absurd today, but back then, it was taken seriously. Most of those bells rusted away decades ago. At least, that's what I thought. On my third week, around midnight, I was making my usual patrol near the old family vaults. It was a still night. Not a single leaf moved in the air. And then, out of nowhere, I heard it. A faint chime, a single note carried through the silence. I froze. My flashlight beam trembled as I swept it over the graves. Nothing, just weathered angels and crosses leaning against the night. Probably the wind, I whispered, though my voice cracked, and the trees were dead still. The next night, it happened again, and again, always near the same cluster of crypts where the stones were so old the names had faded to dust. By the fourth night, my curiosity gnawed at me. I followed the sound. My boots crunched on gravel as I came to a small, sealed crypt. Its iron door was fused with rust. But hanging from the stone grate was a thin wire, so thin I wouldn't have noticed it if not for the pale shine of moonlight. At the end of it, a bell. It swayed, not by wind, not by touch. It swayed on its own, ringing slow, deliberate notes. I backed away, my throat dry. My radio crackled suddenly, making me jump. But there was no voice, just static. I switched it off, my hands shaking. That night I dreamed of the crypt. I saw the bell shaking violently, string pulled taut from below. I saw stone crumbling, fingers clawing upward, nails snapping against rock. In the dream, something pale and eyeless broke through and grabbed my ankle. I woke drenched in sweat, gasping, convinced for a moment I still felt that grip. When I returned for my next shift, every instinct told me not to go back. But I needed the money, so I tried to laugh at myself, to rationalize it. Bells don't ring by themselves. Dreams are just dreams. It worked until midnight. I passed the crypt again, and this time, the bell wasn't swaying gently. It was ringing furiously, yanked back and forth by some unseen hand. The sound cut through the silence, frantic and sharp. Ding, ding, ding. I forced myself closer, heart thundering in my chest. My flashlight beam swept the door and froze. There were scratches. Fresh scratches gouged into the limestone, jagged marks running down the stone, like fingernails clawing from the inside. And then, beneath the ringing, came a new sound. A voice. It was faint, muffled, but real. A low, guttural moan, like someone drowning beneath earth. A plea that clawed into my bones. I dropped the flashlight. It spun on the ground, beams scattering wildly across the grass. And in that wild light, I saw movement. Other bells. Dozens of them. Bells I hadn't noticed before, strung to other crypts, other graves. One by one, they began to sway. First a few, then all of them. The air filled with a deafening chorus of panic, bells clanging in unison, desperate and relentless. I clamped my hands over my ears, stumbling backward. The ground beneath me felt soft, like something below was shifting, like the soil itself was rising. I ran. I don't remember how I made it back to the guard station. My legs moved without thought, lungs burning. When I finally slammed the door shut and locked it, I collapsed in the corner, shaking, listening to the muffled echo of bells in my head until sunrise. The next morning, I told my supervisor. He chuckled, said pranksters probably snuck in, or maybe tourists left old trinkets behind. But I saw the way his eyes flickered, like he knew more than he wanted to admit. I quit the job the following week. But even now, when I drive past Greenwood at night, I swear I can hear it. That faint, metallic chime rising from the darkness. A sound that means someone, somewhere, is still waiting to be let out. My name is Eli, and when I was 17, I did the dumbest thing I've ever done. I lay down on a nameless grave because my friends dared me to. If you're reading this hoping for theatrics, hands bursting from the dirt, demons clawing the sky, you won't get that. What happened was smaller, quieter, and so much worse. It followed me home. The cemetery sits behind a wind vent line of mesquite trees on the edge of our town in central Texas, past the grain silos and the water tower that always looks like it's about to fall. Old stones lean at angles, names chipped away by weather and neglect. We used to go there to drink cheap beer and scare each other. It felt harmless. Then, late one August night, Jesse said, "Bet you won't do the corpse lay." The corpse lay is exactly what it sounds like. You pick a grave, lie flat on your back over it for one full minute, and don't move. Folks around here say it shows respect, that you're willing to meet the dead at their level. That's not how we meant it. We meant it as a joke. There was one grave we always avoided. It was just a rough wooden cross, unpainted, no name, no dates. Somebody had hammered it into the dirt so deep the bottom half was splintering. No flowers ever lay there, not even plastic ones that melt in the sun. You could walk the whole cemetery and never feel the wind, and then you'd pass that cross and wind would find you thin and cold, like it had been waiting. That one, Jesse said, his breath sweet with whiskey. 60 seconds. I tried to laugh it off, but the others were already taking out their phones. The moon was thin and the sky felt close, like a lid over a jar. I kicked aside some weeds and lowered myself onto the dirt. The earth was still hot from the day. Prickles worked through my shirt. I folded my hands over my chest like they do in the funeral home and looked up at the branches. "Start the timer," I said. The first 10 seconds were nothing but bravado. At 20, I focused on my breathing. At 30, I noticed the smell, metallic, like cut pennies. At 40, the soil under my shoulder blades loosened an inch, then another, as if something hollow below me exhaled. I told myself it was a sink of old ground. My chest felt heavier. I couldn't draw a full breath. 20 seconds, somebody said, but the voice sounded far away, as if it came through the earth. I closed my eyes and felt the most specific thing I have ever felt, the weight of a head turning beneath me, slow and deliberate, the way you turn on a pillow when you wake in the middle of the night. There was nothing to see, no movement of dirt, just the unmistakable hinge of a neck beneath the soil, and then a pause, as if the person under me were listening. 5, Jesse counted. 4, 3, 2, I sat up before he said one. Everyone groaned and laughed, but the laughter sounded wrong, gray and thin. I stood, brushing dirt from my shirt, trying to hide the trembling in my hands. "There," I said. "Done." "Nope," Jesse said, grinning. "You moved on too. Call it 90%, I said. "Let's go." We went. They were joking again by the time we crossed the fence, but I kept looking back. The cross leaned a little, like a person who doesn't want to be left alone. At home, my mother was asleep. I showered, trying to wash the iron smell from my hair. The house had that summer heat that sinks into the drywall and stays after the sun goes down. I lay in bed facing the window. The AC rattled to life, died, and started again. Somewhere past midnight, I heard a soft tap, like a knuckle on glass. I opened my eyes. Nothing at the window, just the reflection of my room. I sat up, and the tapping came again. Not the window, the bed frame. Small, polite from underneath. I told myself it was the house settling. I lay back down and pressed my palms flat to the mattress to steady it. Something pressed back light as a hand placed on top of mine. I jerked away so hard I hit my head on the headboard. The tap-tap started again, moving along the slats like a person feeling their way in the dark. I slept with the lights on, if sleep is what you call counting breaths until the sky goes gray. In the morning, I was bleary and ashamed. I told myself I'd let a dare crawl into my head. I made coffee extra strong and walked outside. The yard smelled like dust and cut grass. The sun was already bright. On the porch, leaning against the railing, sat a little bell. Not the jingly kind from a cat's collar, an old iron bell with a loop of wire through it, the kind they used to rig to a coffin in the 19th century in case someone woke up after they were buried. I'd seen pictures in a book once, a whole row of graves with strings leading to little bells at the surface. I stared at the bell, my stomach turning. Someone was messing with me, I told myself. Jesse had to have put it there. I picked it up by the wire and the bell swayed once, twice, then settled. When I brought it inside, the air in the kitchen tasted like pennies again. I set the bell on the counter and it chimed all by itself, just a single, careful note, like a person clearing their throat before speaking. That afternoon, I walked to Jesse's. He swore he hadn't touched the bell. "You're spiraling," he said, but his eyes slid past mine. "We were drunk." "Forget it." I tried. For 2 nights, the tapping came from under the bed at the same time, 2:13 a.m. On the 3rd night, it didn't tap. It whispered, not a word, my name. Eli. Not from the floor, not from the window. From the mattress beneath my ear, as if someone lay where I lay, speaking up through the springs. I stopped going to school. I told my mother I had a virus. On the 4th day, she drove me, angry and worried, to Pastor Jim at the little white church by the feed store. He listened without interrupting, his brows drawing together like 2 pieces of string being knotted. When I finished, he said, "The dead don't always want to witness. Sometimes they want to trade." "A trade for what?" I asked. "For being remembered," he said softly. "Names matter." That night, I went back to the cemetery alone because fear has a way of convincing you you're the only person who can fix it. The moon was bigger now. The cross looked shorter, like it had sunk. I knelt and tried to pray, but all I could do was talk. I told whoever lay there that I was sorry. I said I shouldn't have used them for a dare. I said if they told me their name, I would say it out loud. I would bring flowers. I would come on their birthday if they had one. I would remember. The wind rose and fell. No answer. I set the bell at the base of the cross with the wire looped over the wood. If you ring it, I said, I'll come back. I swear. Nothing rang. I left it there. 2 days passed. No taps. No whisper. The iron taste left the air. I started to believe it was over. On the third day, a storm rolled in from the hills, hard enough to knock out power. The world went slate gray at 5 in the afternoon. When the lights finally came back, our landline phone, yes, we still have one, my mom says it survives storms, was blinking. One new voicemail. The timestamp said 2:13 a.m. I pressed play. The message was empty for a long 5 seconds, the kind of silence that lets you hear the shape of a room. Then the bell chimed once, twice. A breath. And a voice so close to the receiver I could feel the static on my skin said, Eli. I hung up so fast I almost ripped the cord out of the wall. The next morning, I went back to the grave with a Sharpie, some wire, and a little aluminum plaque the hardware store sells for mailboxes. I didn't have a name, but I had an idea. I scratched the words into the plate and wired it to the cross. I will remember you. I know that sounds childish. It was, but the air eased when I tightened the wire. The weeds around the mound lay down as if brushed by a hand. I stood there until the sun was high and the cicadas started up. Nothing else happened. It's been 6 years. I moved to Austin, then back again. I married and have a kid who sleeps with one fist tucked under his cheek the way I used to. Sometimes I dream of lying on warm soil while someone shifts beneath me, turning their head to listen. When I wake, the house is quiet. The bed does not tap. The bell sits in my top dresser drawer, wrapped in an old bandana. I have never rung it. I still visit that grave 3 times a year, the first cold night, the first bluebonnets, and the hottest day of August. The wooden cross finally rotted. I replaced it with cedar. Last summer, after a drought, the dirt cracked open at the base and I saw a corner of something that looked like stone. I brushed away dirt with my fingers until letters emerged, simple and shallow as if scratched by a nail. E-L-I, my throat closed. The rest of the name was broken off, but those letters were there, plain as daylight. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe my brain put what it wanted into the cracks. I don't tell that part when people ask why I leave flowers at a nameless grave. I just say that names matter, and some promises are the only fence we can build between the living and whatever listens underneath. When the wind comes thin and cold through the mesquite, the bell in my drawer sometimes answers by itself with a single, careful note. And I lay awake, grateful and afraid, repeating the only inscription that ever helped. I'll remember you. Please remember me.